Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. We are excited to welcome Caitlin. Caitlin is an adoptee through our agency that was placed 37 years ago. She was actually one of the first open adoption cases at the hospital she was born at in Pennsylvania. So we are excited to have you and welcome, Caitlin.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So Caitlin, share with us, I know you've done some speaking engagements for Adoptions from the Heart in the past, but I don't know if we've ever interviewed you one-on-one for AFTHtv.
No, this is fun.
Yeah. Share with us a little overview about your journey, a little kind of context of who you are, your parents, so all that goodness.
Sure. So I'm Caitlin, obviously, and my mom and dad, so my adoptive parents are Kathy and Rocky, and then my birth mom is Michelle. So it's really cool because I've grown up my entire life knowing Michelle because of Amazing Adoptions from the Heart and having that open adoption. And I met her for the first time when I was like kindergarten age, but I knew about her my whole life. And that's something that I always share is so cool because often as an adult you get asked when did you meet your birth mom? How did that go? And I'm always I grew up knowing her, knowing about her. And there's even a video that I remember seeing years ago, the old VHS tapes. And it was my parents actually showing me as a baby, pictures of my birth mom. So it was just so cool that to me, it was always a thing and a part of my life. There was never the finding out moment. I just always knew. And I always explained Michelle as a big sister, cool aunt. That's the relationship that we have. She just always grew up as part of I grew up with her as just part of our family in that way. And that was the role that she took. So there's a little blurb to kind of kick it off and start. And I'll let you ask me more specifics from there.
A lot of times adoptive parents, especially if birth parent maybe chooses to not have as much contact in the beginning, because maybe they're going through their own journey, their own processing. What do you think helped? You did share a little bit of picture sharing, videotapes. What helped you know that Michelle was always a part of picture, even though she may not have physically been there? What did your parents do to offer that space where this was all normalized?
Yeah, I think never shied away from talking about her. And it was always a very open conversation. And I was always encouraged to ask questions, to have curiosities, anything that I wanted to know about adoption, about Michelle. It was a very just open door. So I never, even as a kid, I never hesitated to ask anything. And I think that really helps in the processing of it all, right? Because if you know it's an open door that you can ask questions about, you can raise, I don't even know that it's concerns, but I was always allowed to feel anything I felt and ask anything that I wanted. And just having her always be someone that was talked about. They talked about Michelle like they would any other family member, just like you would talk about an aunt, they would talk about Michelle. So just like you might have aunts that live out of state and maybe you don't see as often, but they're still talked about. I think that's how Michelle was really handled and dealt with. So I just was oh, that's who she is. Even when I hadn't met her, that's how she was talked about, just as a family member. So it was so normalized to me.
And then what did life look like for you after Michelle came into the picture and participated? What did the contact look like in terms of visits or connection? What was the openness?
It changed and developed so much over the years. And that's something that I think is really, really cool because I don't think you're ever going to know, right? Every adoption story is so unique and so different. And I don't think Michelle or my parents came into this knowing what it was going to look like either. But the first time I ever met her was actually at the annual Adoptions from the Heart picnic. That's when I first met her. And I remember we have this picture of all of us together on a little picnic blanket at that event. So that was the first time we met her, or I met her. And that was something that we did. So we went to some of the picnics then over the years. And then as I got older, something we started doing that I looked forward to every year is, so she lived in Lancaster. And at that time we were in the Lansdale, Hatfield area. And we would take a trip every year out to Lancaster, and we would stay in a hotel for like a few days. And I just got to spend time getting to know Michelle, like seeing her area. And that was a vacation that I looked forward so much to every year. Like I have amazing memories of like the hotels we stayed at, going to Dutch Wonderland with her, getting to go and see like the child care center that she ran. Like we would go all around Lancaster and go to the different like shops. And there's even to this day I remember when we were at the shops, I was obsessed with Beanie Babies at the time, right? Because Beanie Babies are like a huge thing. And there's a Beanie Baby that had my birthday, and Michelle ended up buying me that Beanie Baby. It's a little lamb. I still have it, and it's actually in my daughter's bedroom. And we actually took a picture of her when we did our newborn photos, like with it. So it's just like so cool because like Michelle was so interwoven into that like childhood part then and those trips that we would do. And then in middle school, I got really involved with like competitive gymnastics. And Michelle loved coming to my meets, and my parents highly encouraged it. Oh my gosh, it was basically like every other weekend then. There was a meet somewhere. I would be there, my parents would be there, Michelle would come, and it was just so cool that I would get to see her that often. And then it just continued to develop. So like through high school, like same thing. I was still doing competitive gymnastics through like half of that. Through college, she would even come and visit me sometimes at college. And then after that, like through the whole process of this, when I got married, my mom and Michelle actually walked each other down the aisle at my wedding, which was so cool. And they actually wrote and read a poem at my wedding together too. So like to go from like the day meeting at the Adoptions in the Heart picnic, watching how it like developed, to then them walking each other like down the aisle and like reading together, it's just like that a full picture moment, right? It's just like so cool. So lots of development, lots of changes. None of us knew that's what it was going to look like, but I'm so grateful, like so grateful.
Well, and I know you shared that you recently gave birth to your daughter a few months ago. Can you share with our community what you chose in terms of her name?
I can. So this is a really fun story, and I love sharing this. So Caitlin Trone, obviously you guys can see that's my name now. When Michelle found out she was pregnant with me and was trying to decide what to do and weighing out all of her options, right? When she decided on adoptions through Adoptions from the Heart, she went home and she was like praying about it. And she felt like she had heard God say to her, like, Angelica will be fine. And she's like, okay, I made the right decision. Like, this is my confirmation. And she was like, I'm calling this baby Angelica. So that was her name that she named me. And her like friends had like gotten together and they were like, well, what middle name goes with Angelica? And they decided on Rose. So my first birth certificate that Michelle has actually says Angelica Rose. And then my parents had said to her, well, like, do you want that to be her name? And Michelle's like, no, if she's running out in front of a car, I don't want you like thinking, what's her name? So I was named by my parents, Caitlin Michelle. So they gave me Michelle's name as my middle name. So I grew up as Caitlin Michelle. But I always had this strong connection with this name, Angelica Rose. And I always loved knowing how I had two names. I always use that as like the fun fact, like, you know, you do like the two truths and a lie. I'm like, I have two birth certificates and two names. Like, how cool is that? It was something I was always like proud of. So I had this connection to this name. And I remember like growing up always like thinking, and I don't think I ever voiced this to anyone, but I remember always thinking like, maybe someday if I had a daughter, I would name her Angelica Rose. Like I had this cool connection to that name. And it always stuck with me. And through the years, like you're like, oh, this is now a name that I like. And this is a name that I like. But when it actually came time to like being pregnant, knowing we were going to have a baby girl, and my husband and I discussing names, I like had told him about Angelica Rose. And he always wanted something that there wasn't a million names of. And it was something like unique with a meaning. So he's like, this fits all the bills. Like that sounds great. And my other thing that I always wanted was a nickname that would be her own then. So I wanted Angelica Rose to be like this name, this family name with the story to it. But then I wanted her to have her own name. And that was one holdback that I always had, that I couldn't figure out a good nickname that I loved. And the one day I was driving and I was like, Angelica Rose, A-R. I was like, Ari. So that then sold us on everything. So her formal name's Angelica Rose, and we do call her Angelica, but we also call her Ari because that's her unique name that is only hers. But it was really important that she always knew like where she came from and like my history with adoption, because it is so important to me and something that I speak about very openly and always have my whole life. I wanted her to get to have the name that like I never had. And it was just so cool because I remember when I told the first people I called is I called Michelle and my mom, right? Because I wanted to make sure everyone was cool with this name. And I remember my mom was like, well, do you wish you had been named that? And I'm like, no. I was like, this name was like given to me to hold and wait for Ari. Like I truly believe in my core that this name was always meant for my daughter. And it was just meant for me to kind of hold in that interim time period. So I get emotional saying it, but like, it's so meaningful to me. So I know that name was just always meant for her.
Well, now that we're all crying. Wow. I mean, that's a really powerful story, Caitlin. I know when you first came to us, we were drawn to your story and just your family's open heart to adoption and birth family and Michelle, but then taking it a step further, you hitting these milestones in your own life of marriage and having a child, and you still turning to your adoption story and including Michelle and all of that is really powerful. And I'm happy that folks get to hear this directly from you. Because it can be hard. It can be really hard in the beginning when you're trying to figure out becoming a parent, what this is going to look like, how to have a relationship with a birth parent, envisioning the future. You're clearly like the goal of what everyone would love to see. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way. What advice would you have for adoptees and maybe prospective adopted parents that may not get quite what you have, but are still curious to like engage in the openness? Like, what advice would you give people?
I guess for like adoptive parents, potential adoptive parents, I truly believe, I know no matter what happens, there's always going to be fear associated, right? Like there's always going to be that what if, the unknowns, like some type of fear is going to be associated with it. My advice would be like, don't let that hold you back. And something I always come back to give you guys like a little thing to stick to was a poem that I still have today in my bathroom. It was a little plaque that my mom always had in my room, and I have it memorized. And it says, "Not flesh of my flesh, nor bone of my bone, but still miraculously my own. Never forget for a single minute, you didn't grow under my heart, but in it." And again, like things that bring me to tears still because adoption's so powerful to me, but it is like that ultimate act of love. So even if you're an adoptive parent, like a prospective adoptive parent listening to this and thinking like, I don't know if this is the right fit, it does have that fear, so many unknowns with it, like you are truly doing like the ultimate act of love for a little baby and a little child that like just wants a loving home, and you truly could be that loving home for them. So even if you don't end up with like the perfect relationship with the birth mom, it's okay, because you still are both doing these ultimate act of love for this child. And that's what truly matters in the end. Like that is what matters, is everybody just making their best attempt, whatever that is, to give this baby the best life that you can. And for adoptees, it's not going to be picture perfect either. So yes, I have an amazing relationship with my birth mom. I don't with my birth dad. That's a very complicated can of worms that I just, at this point, don't touch. So I understand both sides of it. I just choose to focus on the good one, and I don't worry about the one that's a little complicated. It's okay. There's going to be complicated parts of your story. And there's times where I just never thought about it and didn't care about the complicated parts. And there's times where I did, but when there were times that the harder emotions came up, especially associated with my birth dad, I was so grateful that both my parents and my birth mom were there to like kind of help me through that and help me process that. And what I think everybody always needs to just keep coming back to is focusing on giving this child love. And if you give this child love, that is truly all that matters. And just making like the best attempt from both parties, right? To just give this child the best life that you possibly can. And as long as you are giving it your best effort, that is truly what matters, and you are making a difference for a baby that just truly needs love. So,
Thank you, Caitlin. We always love to hear from you. You have such energy and love, and it's interesting because your birth mom, Michelle, has that same energy.
I've been told that. I've been told like that is just very much like, I don't know, personalities are genetic, but yeah. She
And for
definitely has that. She walks into a room and it just like brightens, and I'm like,
yes,
I love that about her. Yeah.
and similar smile, the way you both smile and you're just happy. I believe we've actually interviewed Michelle before, so if folks want to learn about her perspective, feel free to check out her interview under AFTHtv episodes. But thank you. We always love hearing your story. Congratulations on your little one.
Thank you.
And just good luck. I'm sure we will circle back to you again in the future, but we're just happy that you could offer your story for folks to hear.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for always having an open door to letting adoptees share, because I think it's really cool for us to, on the other side of it now, get to kind of share our experience. So thank you guys for all the work that you do. It makes such a big difference.
Wonderful. Well, please feel free to tune into future episodes here at Adoptions from the Heart TV. Hey guys, if you are enjoying the content here at AFTH TV, please subscribe and hit the bell.